Hey, Anchor community, welcome to the next space. Y'all, I have been missing you all so much. I'm so glad that you have made it to another session. That means you survived the first episode and you decided to journey with me to say, let me see what this girl is talking about. Listen, your kingdom mental health strategist, she's back. I have such an important topic, one that was near to where I've been in past spaces. And kind of being honest, I've just realized that it's a whole thing. And so I really wanted to talk about a topic that is just so pertinent in the community. Those of you that have been building, those of you that considered yourselves like black sheeps of the family, but felt like you had to do or give just a little bit more. Those of you that walk in the area of acceptance, wanting to be accepted, wanting to feel like you belong, and really not noting when you've done just a little bit too much. And so today's episode, I had to free myself even coming to this moment. Can I tell you why? Y'all, I am such a person that operates out of the spirit of excellence that even coming in to record with you today and to sit with you, I was frustrated about not wanting to have this iPad, but I literally sat with some good notes and I'm like, man, I gotta free myself from even wanting to be perfected in every space as I battled getting up and sharing. And it taps in for such the topic that is so important. I want to talk about something today. It's called the healing habit of overgiving, learning to pour without emptying. My, learning to pour without emptying. I have found even myself, those of you that you can relate, go ahead and put something in the chat. Like if you can relate to places where you've been deemed to need to pour more, but you're like, man, I feel like the cup is empty. But there's such a demand in my pour. Or watch this. I've created unhealthy habits in my pour. And so I've poured into drains where they could not catch what I was pouring out. Identifying that some people that you've poured into, they didn't retain it because they had their own underlining perception of why they needed you. And in other spaces, you've poured out more than what you had in your bank, had in your safety storage. And because you felt as though you needed to give and you've created a habit of giving. Some of us don't realize we've overgave in places where we should have put a lid on it. And so today I want us to bring up and to raise some awareness of feeling like, man, being a good person means to be in a consistent state of pour. Being a good person means that I need to give my all. Being a good person means that I need to create this habit that when there's a need of me, to eliminate rejection and abandonment, I rather step into this place of pour, whether I have it there or not. I realize that in that, there are some things that I want us to share together. So I'm going to talk about three dimensions where we've overgave in places where we should have placed a lid. I want to talk about three dimensions of areas that I realized even myself, had I had this information, had I operated in this sense of knowledge and collaboration with wisdom, I could have been more prepared. I could have really understood that, Tameria, you're pouring where it's no capture and there's no receiving of what you're pouring. But sometimes people want to just be able to breathe in your space and you're pouring from areas that have been sacrificed. I want to talk about it. So one thing I want us to narrate on is mentally giving all, overthinking in certain places. Can I be transparent? When I first started my walk as a kingdom builder, I started an organization, and in that organization, I was trained prior to it of how a leader is supposed to show up. And when I looked at how I was supposed to show up, I didn't realize that how my showing up was creating unhealthy cycles. I believe that cycles is something that goes in rotation and it's not necessarily healthy in any perspective. So I was in an unhealthy cycle. I felt as though if I can grow this number of individuals in the lives that I'm touching, I felt that that was fruit. Yeah. I felt that if I could pour and pour into multiple people, that it will breed that there's some sort of success margin going with the number of people that I felt that I was pouring into. I felt like I had to, if I could pour more, then I am making the impact that I thought was considered to be just good. I felt like if I overextended myself, that they would be receptive of who I was. There was a mental thing about what I was pouring out that made me feel as though if I can give it my all, they would see who I really was. And the reality was, I was pouring in places that did not have divine alignment with where I was going. I was pouring so much that, can I be honest, my family became the sacrifice because I would do it under the guise of, well, I'm doing it for ministry. I'm doing it for purpose. I am getting out of my bed late nights, early mornings. I'm spending more time trying to be the philanthropist and build in the community, and the reality is the family was being sacrificed. And so I began, y'all, over the course of me taking this journey toward being a new Tameria, I had to take a journey to realize that if I replayed some conversations worrying about what everybody thought, I would have realized way before I did that, Tameria, you're disguising your rejection and abandonment in giving. You're disguising wanting to be liked or feeling like there's fruit in this pour by overgiving. I gave way more, y'all, than I should have. But because mentally I wasn't healed where I should have been, I gave from places that was already projecting not only abandonment, but there was a sense of emptiness. And so I wanted to ask myself, if I were to go back and say to my younger self when I started this journey, Tameria, maybe you should have taken time to realize the value in you before you go out trying to help values in others. Because me trying to find like the value in myself, I began to realize that me finding the value in myself would have meant that I would have realized long before now that you're pouring into places and spaces that does not benefit where you're going. And so mentally, I realized there's something about you, Tameria, that needed God to show up so that not only can there be a healing to take place, but then I can show up authentically me. Is that even a word? I think it's authentically. Yeah, that's it. Authentically me. I realized that through the motion of disappointment, through the barriers of people pleasing, let's talk about it. Because even in people pleasing, um, as a giver, I found myself, if I didn't give enough or it didn't satisfy the individual, I would find myself wanting to give more in order to feel accepted. Can I tell y'all, I did it? I would find myself showing up more because I wanted the person to see the value in me. I wanted you to see that I love hard. I wanted you to see that I'm willing to do whatever it takes so that you can be made well and made whole. I wanted you to see that God really did put something on the inside of me that wanted to birth purpose in everybody and in everything that they were doing. I wanted them to see that, Tameria, watch these words, y'all. You are a good person. I wanted them to see that. But the reality is, if I didn't see it, how can I expect somebody else to see it? If I did not find the value, How can I birth value in myself for others to see when I didn't even value myself? When we're over giving, y'all, we realize that sometimes we give too much, and the thing about us begin to disappear piece by piece. What disappeared for you, Tameria, when you operated in that state of overgiving and trying to pour from places that you were really in empty of? Y'all, the pieces that began to fall and the pieces of me that weren't made heal or whole was one, I was tired. um I found myself drained often. I found myself emotionally and physically and mentally drained. What does that mental fatigue look like? That mental and emotional fatigue meant that although I've poured everything out and the people that I poured it into, the drain pipes, maybe they didn't retain it, but guess who suffered? My children. I did not have enough to go around because I was pouring it all out in every other place besides where it needed to be. I did not have the energy to pour into the things that God was also calling me to do because I was afraid that had I abandoned the space of my pour, then I wouldn't gain access to my next. Oh, that is good. I felt like if I continued to pour, although I was tired, I was mentally and emotionally fatigued, piece by piece, I began to realize that I didn't even have the desire to show up in the capacity that I started. I began to find myself being a part of spaces because I had lost my own identity. The things that continue to fall from my overgiving, I began to want to be a part of things that did not yield wellness for me. And I'm not talking about a wellness that captures what God had for me. I'm talking about a wellness that said, Tameria, it's okay to show up as you, and you don't have to show up in any other capacity. People pleasing through my overgiving caused me to question the things that God had told me to do. I began to question what else is there for me. I felt like when I decided that people pleasing wasn't working, when people would step away, I used to think something had been wrong with me. I began to feel like I wasn't doing enough. And I began to question God, not my poor. I began to question the intentionality that God had for my life. And what aspect did I mismanage? I began to self assess, but not from a healed lens, from a lens that was still broken. Tamari, what did that look like? Because I believe I'm talking to someone that's watching this and you've given in so many areas with no return. And in some places, if we're not careful, we can give so much that the anger begin to fester because we want to understand. I want to link to rooms that are giving just as much as I am. I want to link with people that are giving, or you may find yourself saying, man, I've done this for somebody. I've done that for them. You begin to list the resume of how you showed up in their life. But the reality is, did you give because there was a need? Or did you give because something in you was not completed, healed, or made whole? And so the anger is at the other person when the reality is the only person was at fault was myself. Because who told me to sacrifice? Who told me to make the sacrifice my family? And who told me that the mandate was for me to sacrifice who I am to show up? Y'all, it is so real when we begin to realize that when we overgive, the person that it damages, it's not the community, it's you. You begin to become this ultimate sacrifice because you're trying to gain traction in something that is not even biblically blueprinted. Yes, the word of God says that God utilized people to elevate. But if you're not careful, there are some biblical depictions of people that come into your life that are meant to deplete where you are. And so I began to ask myself questions, y'all, practical questions like, Tameria, What are you learning? What are you gaining? My clinical assessment of myself, y'all, the mental health strategist, she had to she had to assess. And I started asking myself, why are you, Tameria, showing up this way? Why are you, Tameria, showing up invisible? Why did you say invisible? Because the reality is what you saw wasn't what was happening behind closed doors. What you saw in the pulpits, praying, teaching, prophesying, it wasn't how I felt internally. I was the woman almost with the issue of blood for years, where I was trying my best to seek something, but I did not have the right source. I was going to everybody for everything. And my reality was, I can pray somebody else through, but I needed somebody else to pray me through. I can help to push and provoke and add. A friend of mine tells me all the time, she said, Tameria, you are like the fire, the lighted match that light everybody that comes close to you. But what happens when that lit match no longer has that burning desire to do the things that she has been called to do? Y'all, the one that lit matches for others, although outwardly her match seemed to be burning, internally it was dimmed. Internally it began to deplete. And so I realized that you can't be called to serve if you're slowly suffocating who you are. You can't continue to pour when you're suffocating what you've been purposed to do. We can no longer over anything concerning who we are and expect to gain the maximum outcome. And so if we're over giving, if we're over extending consistently, and let me pause because I'm gonna tell y'all something. There are some people that come into our lives that pivots our identity. There are people that come into our lives where our pour is not vain. There are people that will come into your life that when you pour, not only would they catch it, it will be net breaking. There are people that we can pour and gain access to that will help to shape us. But I'm asking you about the individual, which is you. Healing spiritually means returning to balance and loving others and honoring the place that God has placed you in. And so, if you are called to this space where you're like, well, Tameria, how do I give and gain access without limiting or breaking who I am and who I'm meant to be? How do I, Tameria, heal the habit of overgiving without depleting or diminishing what I built? How do I, Tameria, help to pivot this corner that I've been in? Because the reality is, if you've been over in all of that, y'all, there's a corner and you've pushed yourself with limitations. God can't use you if you're fatigued. The area that you've been called to, whether you're a kingdom builder, you're a strategist, you're an entrepreneur, the game changer. How are you changing the game and you don't mentally have the fortified faith, structure, or even the well being to navigate? Sometimes when we're moving from one place to another, if we don't assess to change it, we'll just meet the same people because we're attracting the individuals that need something from our pour. We just have to operate with discernment. You hear my word, to understand, like, man, if I pour here, what am I gaining? What am I benefiting? Or watch this question: how does it position me in purpose? And so we got to begin to realize that if we don't fix this now, it only grows as we grow. It only changes as we continue to develop. It is us that have to do the work. Listen, there's a woman in the Bible, and I'm gonna give you some key points and we're gonna move along. There's a woman in the Bible, and it's the woman with the alabaster box. And she came to the feet of Christ. He was sitting in the room with others, and she came to the feet of him, and she had this box of anointed oil, and some in some gospel it says perfume. She had this box, and it was an anointed oil, y'all. And the Bible depicts it as like it's worth a year's earning, and she could have been able to utilize this to gain for her family. It could have added value to what she may needed in the home. But she saw something, and she knew there was something different about Christ in that moment, that although I can do something else with what I have, I'm choosing to do something with what I have that's going to yield a greater reward. And when I tell you, not only did she anoint his feet, she wiped it and cleaned it with her hair. And her posture was something that showed me I have to choose how I pour. Some things in our life can be temporary if we're pouring it into the wrong hands or pouring it into the wrong places. But the woman of God said, I need to be intentional with my pour. And so I want to pour it right here, because if I pour it right here, it's going to yield greatness for the things that I'm looking for God to do in my life. She realized in that moment who Christ was. And so if we were to take that same story and place it into the brinks of our lives, I want to ask you, where are you pouring? Where are you pouring? And so watch this. Here are 4 keys. I want to give y'all 4 key points to heal the habit of overgiving. This has been so good. 1, recognize the root. Overgiving isn't generosity. It is often unhealed fear. Y'all, when I grabbed that thought, I said, overgiving isn't generosity, but it's really unhealed fear. And so, how we recognize the root, Tameria, sometimes we got to go back to our childhood. I was in a panel discussion recently, and I was telling the women that sometimes growing up in our childhood, we were taught that we had to be a certain way. Some of us, we had to parent our younger siblings in some aspect. We grew up in single family households where we had to show up a way. And if you guys know some of the things that happened growing up, they used to always say, whatever happens here stays here. Some of us were introduced to traumas. And those traumas, if we didn't take care of the root of it, it begins to sprout up in other ways. And so overgiving can also look like, man, Tameria, all my life I had to lead. I never really got the identity of how to live out my childhood. Maybe your childhood consisted of you being supportive of your mother, where you had to cook, you had to clean up in the home, you had to see about the younger siblings, you had to make sure your younger siblings not only ate, but they woke up in the morning because mom was too tired from working 2 and 3 jobs. Maybe you had to be the parent to yourself, where you got yourself up every day to get ready for school. Maybe your mom did not have the opportunity, not because she didn't want to, but maybe because of her having to financially care for you, she couldn't make it to all the events. Maybe because mom had to work or overextend herself to make sure you had what you needed. Maybe mom wasn't able to see you off in the different adventures that you found to be important. And because of that, it birthed in you abandonment and rejection, because you didn't have somebody to show up for you the way that you would have wanted mom to show up for you. So now in your adulthood, you're trying to make sure that you show up for you. You're trying to make sure that you never feel that feeling that you felt again. So you over extend yourself to never feel that way again. Here's another key point: redefine what this walk looks like. Has overgiving caused you to feel like, man, God, there has to be something more? God, I feel like there's some things missing. God, I feel like I'm doing, because I've said this to myself, God, I'm doing everything that you told me to do. And for some reason, I'm still feeling like there's something that is not whole in me. God, I feel like I've given it my all, and my all doesn't feel good enough. So we got to simply sit back and say, God, here is where I need you to redefine who I am in you. I need you, God, to redefine the area that you've called me to. God, I need you to help me to redefine and position me where not only can I see you, but God, I can see you with me and me and you. God, you call me the apple of your eye. What does that look like? How can I lean into that? How do I see myself the way that you see me? God sees us in such a way, but if we don't see it, we will always undervalue who we are because we don't see it. Here's another one. We got to start rebuilding our boundaries. Listen, I just shifted to a new decade in age. And repositioning my boundaries may mean what I did last decade, what I did at 39, I'm not doing at 40. It's okay. I may need to reposition my boundaries to say, hey, how you met me is not who I am. Let me tell y'all, I feel like I evolve every 6 months. My friends, they can't keep up. Amen. Because I feel like if I'm not evolving, I'm stagnant. And so, in every season that you're evolving, maybe you need to reestablish boundaries that causes you to realign with who you're becoming every day. We're changing every day. You should be gaining something new every day. You should be finding your voice every day. You should be finding your position in the kingdom every day. And so, if we're not finding that, reposition your boundaries so that you can get to where you need to be. And then you can heal yourself from this habit of overgiving. And then watch this one. Rest. I'm laughing, y'all. I couldn't even get it out. Rest without guilt. The reason why we overgive is because we got this new thing coming out talking about FOMO. It's a fear that you're missing something. It's a fear that you're missing out. And because you're not resting, you're overgiving, you're overextending, you're overexerting yourself because you're feeling the fear that if I don't show up here, I'm not going to be invited to that. Who am I talking to? If I don't show up in this capacity, I won't be invited again, or maybe they won't see me for who I am. You are effective when you are emotionally, mentally, spiritually made whole. It creates a habit. And so I want you to know the season of overgiving, we're done. I want y'all to just say, I'm done with it. I'm marking off the box to say, I don't have the capacity here anymore. I want you to begin to mark off the box that says, I think I'm done with that. I feel like I've ran the distance. It has ran its course, but I want to channel my way of thinking. I want to re-strategize my focus. I want to realign myself with who I am and who I was always meant to be. And who I'm meant to be doesn't mean there has to be a constant sacrifice to be accepted. Who I'm meant to be doesn't mean that I have to constantly overextend to feel welcomed. Who I'm meant to be has value. She has purpose. He has the faith. He's created to be the man of valor. She's created to be the I am her. Y'all, that's a whole movement. I am her. I am that girl that I can stand, and I can also stand alone and be okay in both aspects. Do I want the people around? Yeah. But I need to be the healed version of me so that when they come around, watch this, I can teach them how to treat me and how to handle me and handle me with care. It doesn't mean that I have to overextend to be accepted. So, y'all, you're not called to be everybody's lifeline. You are called to live whole, grounded, and anchored. Healing the habit of overgiving means finally you believe that you deserve to be loved. You deserve to have good people, and you deserve to pour without overgiving. In this season, we're moving. In this season, we're anchored. And so remember this, if nothing else. Being anchored in who you are means that you're anchored to do anything that you've been called to do. And so today, after this, you have released the habit of overgiving because you found that there's love. You found that there's something in you that's greater. And so my challenge to you today Will you accept? Will you get rid of that space? We have healed the habit of overgiving. Walk this out with me, y'all. This is your next episode of Anchored and Aligned Wellness. Thank you for tuning in, y'all. Until next time, remember, every anchor needs to have this moment. Every conversation needs the dreamer and the visionary, and every moment requires you to show up as the best version of yourself. Are you anchored?